This is a difficult health condition because of what it takes from you. It can take your family, it can take your job, it can take your house, it can take your whole support system and leave a person in a desperate situation. People want to be part of a community and want to find their way back in. Well, how do you find your way back into the community if all the doors are shut?
I think the thing that everybody could learn from the recovery community, we may have difference of opinions or we may have a different taste or whatever, but at the end of the day, our common purpose is to help each other get better.
This story both explains and explores the world of harm reduction in North Carolina, a world filled with unassuming heroes and unsung heroics.
God knew where He wanted me and what He wanted me there for. That boy didn't, it wasn't his time.
If you're wondering what harm reduction is, odds are you do it every day.
Driving a car can be a risky behavior, but we wear a seatbelt and we obey traffic laws, and that's harm reduction. We go to the beach and we risk getting sunburned, so we put on sunscreen. We don't want to get food poisoning, so we check the expiration dates on the food in our refrigerator and in our cabinets.
We trust our neighbors for the most part. We live next to them every day, right? We still lock our doors at night, right? Because that's harm reduction.
For many of us, harm reduction is simply reducing risk in our everyday lives. But for those who work in the field of harm reduction, it's about specifically reducing risk surrounding substance use. Most of this story will take place where most of the work happens, out in small pockets of the state where advocates have settled down and started up small organizations that are saving lives every day. But our story starts with a view from the top and a public health advocate named Alan Della Penna.
You know, harm reduction isn't an abstinence-based approach. There's still people within use, and we want people to get to a healthy recovery stage, but maybe only 20% of them are, for folks who are in a substance use disorder, maybe only 20% are ready for an abstinence. What do you do about the 80%?
Alan recently retired from the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services. He's been in public health for decades, shaping policy both nationally and here in North Carolina. He spearheaded a statewide group called OPDAC, the Opioid and Prescription Drug Abuse Advisory Committee. They coordinate work between the state and nonprofits in the field.
There are things that we can do that a nonprofit can't do, and there are things that nonprofits can do that we can't do. And we try to, kind of meet in the middle. I have learned working with the harm reduction folks that not everybody who's experiencing substance use disorder is going to walk into a state agency building and say, I need your help.
Alan, like many of the people you're about to meet, believes that at the end of the day, harm reduction is about humanity.
We don't want a person to die because of their health condition. And I think for me, one of the first pathways in that I really learned about harm reduction and the opioid epidemic was naloxone. Naloxone is a medication that can reverse an overdose. We've begun to equate naloxone to like an AED defibrillator for a heart attack. We have a AED defibrillator now basically on every floor of every public building, and it's saving people from heart attacks every day. It just gives them a chance to live another day. It doesn't address the underlying conditions that led them to the heart attack. It's not preventing the ongoing conditions. It's just allowing a life to be saved. You're reducing the harm.
The other thing critical to seeing harm reduction for what it is seeing substance use disorder for what it is.
It's a chronic health condition, and lots of people live with chronic health conditions, whether it be diabetes or cancer or heart disease, and they can live long, stable, productive lives. And we have seen so many great success stories of people with substance use disorder that can follow the same path. And maybe they have a cycle of recurrence and recovery, but the recovery is the important part of the story, that they can live and continue their life.
That is both the point and the purpose. And as you'll see, that kind of support at the state level has been critical in moving harm reduction from the shadows.
In North Carolina, folks have a way to figure out how to collaborate with each other, whether it's in their community, whether it's the county commissioners, the law enforcement community, the General Assembly, the executive branch of the government, the state agencies. We found our common ground to work together. I know you're meeting with a lot of folks to put this piece together, and I think you're going to meet some amazing people. And they're amazing because they're getting to do what they love, and they're helping people, and they're making progress.
On the road to understanding harm reduction, you'll find inspiring off-ramps all over the state, but there's one group you'll find in towns from the mountains to the coast, the Harm Reduction Coalition, HRC. They've got offices across the state and a network of outreach programs to get to people who can't always get to them.
Probably need socks.
At the NCHRC office in Wilmington, North Carolina, Becca Rose and Vonnie Goodson Simpson are sorting through basic life supplies.
So just wondering if I should tap into maybe one of the thrift stores to see if they
Becca, on the left, started the operation. Vonnie is the case manager here.
We have a bunch of good information like our hours, our outreach phone number, the Never Use Alone number, which is a 24-hour hotline.
This NCHRC office opened about 5 years ago, and Becca has been at the helm ever since.
Over here we have our fentanyl positive board. These are like the names of the drugs that are going around.
NCHRC offices are all unique in different ways to best meet the needs of their local communities, but they have a consistent MO.
Here is a board of basically everything that we give out.
Offering participants much of the same stock and supplies, and always meeting the same mission, helping reduce harm for folks who could use a hand.
We do free HIV and Hep C testing.
Stop in at just about any HRC office and you'll find basic life supplies for all ages and stages. Everything from food, clothes, and diapers, to tools for safe sex, like condoms, and supplies to help people who are continuing to use drugs do it more safely, such as sterile water, tourniquets, and alcohol pads. HRC offices are also places where people can exchange and dispose of used syringes. No stigma attached.
Each of these holds 120 syringes, used syringes. And so our participants will take a biohazard container and they will put their used ones in the biohazard container and bring it back to us. That way it doesn't end up in the trash can, it doesn't end up in any parks or anything like that. People are very, very scared of the term syringe exchange. I think a lot of times people think I'm like sitting in a dark room with needles and I'm just throwing needles out. This is to prevent communicable diseases like HIV and hepatitis C. That is what syringe exchange baseline is to do. So instead of, finding syringes on the ground that are not sterile and sharing syringes, communicating like hepatitis C to other people or HIV to other people, that spreads in our community. It's community care, right?
Just down the road from the work being done in Winston-Salem is an example of how well it can go when all the parts are working together. It started a few years back at UNC Greensboro with the idea for GC Stop, the Guilford County solution to the opioid problem, and the person who muscled it into place, Chase Holloman.
I'm an adjunct professor here, and I've worked with dozens of social work students, and I also train first responders, mostly emergency services, on how to engage someone that uses drugs.
My name is Brian Kendrick. I graduated with a Master's of Social Work here at UNCG. My first year internship was with this gentleman right here at GC Stop, Guilford County Solution to Opioid Problem.
GC Stop is a program, it's a partnership between the county and UNC Greensboro. We have a suite of harm reduction services that we offer that range from post-overdose response to our syringe services program, to being a healthcare hub for people who use drugs, my Justice Involved program where we're able to go into the jails. We're just a resource for people who use drugs in the community.
We're not authority figures, we're peers, we're colleagues. I've been where you are, I have the lived experiences.
And the first thing we do is we work to destigmatize. We have to bust some myths that exist about people who use drugs and who they are and what they do.
Along with busting myths, Chase, Brian, and the rest at GC Stop are out building bridges. Part of what makes the program so successful is community buy-in.
One of the things we've learned a lot from our social work colleagues is how to talk to someone after an overdose, and often the when do you talk to someone after an overdose.
That's Jim Albright. He heads up emergency medical services in Guilford County and works hand in hand with GC Stop.
We're incredibly fortunate with the relationship that we've established. We saw it as an opportunity to work with our community local university, but also the university's opportunity to work with the community. So it was
under Jim's leadership, Guilford County EMS has done an about-face in how it handles overdose calls, establishing a post-overdose response team.
A post-overdose response team is a rather novel concept that's come around just in the past few years.
The team really provides the opportunity to approach a patient from different directions.
It's a result of first responders, typically emergency services, responding to overdose.
For years we just ran the call and it was an episodic contact with a patient. I think what we've learned is that it's more than that.
So what we do is we get referrals from emergency services, and they'll ask the person if they'd like to be reached out to by someone with lived experience. If the person says, yeah, we'll go and visit that person, ask them how we can support them, get them naloxone, access to supplies that can help increase their health.
What we really need is folks that have lived experience, that have been where that person is. I'm not. I've never overdosed, I've never had substance use issues. I really rely heavily on the collegial relationship that we've developed with the University of North Carolina at Greensboro and the program that we've developed in GC Stop.
Another big part of the program's success is a commitment from this man, Guilford County Sheriff Danny Rogers, who, by all accounts, means it when he says things like this.
The young teenagers or the young adults don't need a hammer, just need love on them.
That's the message his deputies are hearing daily, as Rogers hammers home the idea that law enforcement has changed.
I like to believe that we're totally different than the past history of law enforcement, arresting people and just telling them, like, you know better, you knew better, so you get what you get. That's not what we do here at Guilford County Sheriff's Office. We make sure that when someone is down on their luck, or they're traveling through an illness, and they're dealing with addiction, we're not putting them down. What we're doing, we're trying to make sure that we can get them the help to be educated, try to get them to understand that it is hope, even though they feel hopeless at that time.
We're applying different techniques, much better techniques. We're providing them with more resources, more ways out, more ways to have a better quality of life. Therefore, we're saving families, decreasing what we would have in the mental health, and also mental health community, and also decreasing what we'd have in our criminal justice system.
I love GC Stop because it exists at the crosshairs between, like grassroots community folk and the state, first responders, law enforcement, EMS, the university, things that historically haven't meshed well together.
When people look at me, the first thing they say is, when I tell them that I'm in recovery, the first thing I hear is, "Oh, you don't look like that you used drugs before." And I said, "Well, what does people look like that use drugs?" So that's all.
These days, Troy Manns heads up advocacy for Recovery Communities of North Carolina, RCNC, where he helps people understand stigma.
My job is to really break those walls down and to teach people that addiction is not a moral deficiency, but it is a disease, and to help people understand that people are not bad people. People have made some decisions over a period of time that has led them to this.
Troy's authority on the subject comes from his own life experience.
I'm from a mill town, the town called Eden, North Carolina. I worked a couple of mills, but my addiction was really just, taking over my life. And so I stumbled into this work, and I literally mean I stumbled into it. I had no plan to be a addiction counselor. I had no plan to work in recovery. A friend of mine said, hey man, you know, Freedom House is hiring for a healthcare technician. And I was like, well man, I've never been to college to be a healthcare technician. He was like, dude, you don't have to go to school for this. You'll just be driving the clients to the meetings. And I was like, okay. And I found something that gave me a purpose. I came from a place where people didn't understand it, man. They didn't understand it. They was like, why don't you just stop? You know, like, don't you see what this is doing to you? You know, and then I'm, you know, coming from a religious background, just go to church, you know, and things gonna get better, you know, they're gonna lay hands on you and it's gonna be all right. And really, people didn't understand what was taking place. I'm a big believer in you're a product of what you eat. You're a product of what you eat.
America's public enemy number one in the United States is drug abuse.
If you look back from the Nixon administration and all the way through the Reagan administration with this war on drugs.
Today, there's a new epidemic, smokable cocaine.
And you look at what was being fed to people every day when they turn on the 6 o'clock news, you saw people of color being arrested, thrown on the pavement. So this has been ingrained into the American people's mind when you talk about addiction. And that's the stigma that we're fighting to this day.
It would take years and new demographics before people's attitudes about substance use disorder would start to change.
It started to be more of opioids. And then all of a sudden, when younger white kids begin to overdose, their parents start raising hell. They had somebody to advocate for them. And that's what started this movement. Most people that used drugs in my time, they didn't have people advocating for them. They didn't have anybody to go and advocate for the laws that were being made to incarcerate us for a long time. A lot of people's lives have been ruined because of policies that have been made towards people who are sick.
To the person, all the folks in this story will tell you harm reduction is a calling.
I believe in my soul that it's what I was meant to do.
They've taken on a cause, so to say, you know what, I got a champion for this cause. Everybody don't do that.
And that collective has been growing. The science around substance use disorder and society's understanding of it has been changing. And slowly, we are all becoming part of the solution.
Think about what a life means to you. Think about what that means when somebody is alone and stops breathing, and then that life is over. Think about the weight of that.
You know, you never look at a person with diabetes and say, hey, that dude's a diabetic. You know, that guy's a doctor. That guy's a father. That guy's a husband. Our goal with this is to let you see the whole person versus the addicted person.
We've had opportunities to see tremendous success. Folks that we may have run several overdoses on that we really felt like were on a trajectory that only was going to end in death. And we've seen those folks actually approach recovery, be successful, and return to the community as viable members of our society.
At the end of the day, we're a dysfunctional family as Americans. We really dysfunctional, you know. Everybody think they're right. But at the end of the day, if we put people first again, people first again, then we can help shift this to another place of really being compassionate for others who may be different from us. And different is okay. Like, different is okay.